Are we looking up this word Sheba or Sabians or Sheba? Okay, these are some of the meanings, definitions of what it means, but I want to focus on this fourth one right here. Okay, that's important. That's the one I want to focus on. It says in the Hebrew, okay, ID, a kingdom in Arabia Felix. Sheba, in fact, was Saba in southern Arabia. The Sabians of classical geography who carried on the trade in spices with the other people on the ancient world. They were Semitics speaking one of the two main dialects of Himyaritic of South Arabic. Himyaritic now. Sheba had become a monarchy before the days of Solomon. Its queen brought him mild spices and precious stones, 1 Kings 10, 1 through 13. She called him by our Lord, the Queen of the South, Matthew 12 and 43. Sheba, the Sabians. The Sabians, this is the Britannica.com. The Sabians were a Semitic people who became established in southern Arabia at the unknown date. Excavations in central Yemen suggest that the Sabian civilization began as early as the 10th to the 12th century BC. The Sabians. Himyarite Kingdom. The Himyarite Kingdom, or Himyar, historically referred to as the Himyarite Kingdom by the Greeks and the Romans, was a polity, in the southern highlands of Yemen, as well as the name of the region which it claimed, Himyarite. So we see now that the Sabians were the people who were of Himyar, who ruled the Himyarite kingdom, and they spoke the Himyaritic language. The Himyarite language was a southern Semitic tongue spoken in the southwestern Arabian Peninsula. It was an Arabian language until the 10th century. Evidence of ancient culture and fragments of South Arabic inscriptions judged to be Himyaritic have been found dating from before 700 BC. The language is still in use in a small area of southern Yemen, and it is important for understanding the development of the Semitic language from ancient times. The discovery of the Himyarite language as a living and extant language was due to the extortions of a French researcher named Flagnatius Flagnel in early 19th century. Fresnel had, in letters from Cairo and Jeddah, had made known his curious results of his research in a trip to Mara, a mountainous district near southeastern angle of the Arabian Peninsula. He hired local guides who spoke a language very different from Arabic. When questioned by Fresnel, the guide could not inform him whether his native language was ever written. Fresnel also noticed that this dialect was a but Semitic idiom, but a particular one. Fresnel determined this newly discovered dialect to be the descendants of the language of the ancient Himyarites, which he termed Eheli. This was the name of the local people who preserved the Himyarite idiom in the mountains of Hazik, Marbat, and Zafar in the southeastern part of the peninsula. The designation of Echil Akili means freeman. It is opposed to Teshkari, the German name of the villains or serfs subject to these freemen who speak, however, the same dialect. The Akili language approximates, in many respects, to the more northern divisions of the Semitic speech and differ from Arabic. It has many words common to Arabic and Hebrew and Syriac, and some forms particularly Hebrew. The Akili is reported to be very harsh and glottal at utterance. The Ethiopic language. The Ethiopic language, as it is maintained by competent judges that the Amharic and the Tigray are really dialects of the ancient Ethiopic or Ge'ez, which is dubbed by Adelung and Vatar in the Mithridates. It may be expected from the recent progress of comparative grammar that future scholars will apply them to elucidate the structure of the other Syro-Arabian languages. At present, however, as even the Amharic is not able to boast of adequate and accessible means for its study, and as neither possesses any ancient version of any part of the Bible, the Ge'ez is one which claims a particular notice here. The ancient Ethiopic or Ge'ez, which is the only one of the three dialects that either has been or is now generally used in written documents of a sacred or civil kind, is to be classified as an ancient branch of Arabic. This affinity is evident from the entire grammatical structure of the language. It is confirmed by the relation in its written alphabet character to that of the Himyaritic alphabet, and either supports or is supported by the assumption that Habash or Abyssinia was actually peopled by a colony from southern Arabia. The grammatical structure of the Ge'ez show a largely predominant identity with that of Arabic, but it also possesses some traits which are closer in accordance with the Syro-Arabian idioms, and some which are particular to itself alone. The main features of its structures are as follows. The verb possesses the first 10 conjugations of the Arabic verb, with the exceptions of the eighth and ninth. Beside these, it has two other conjugations which are unknown to Arabic. There is a special conjunctive mood. The double infinitive is often used as a noun. Irrespective of the absolute or construct form, the principle is wanting. The formation of nouns resembled much that of Hebrew. But nouns often have superfluous end vowels, which are modified in particular cases and are analogous to the Arabic nunation. As for the flexations of nouns, the masculine and feminine plurals are either formed by affixed symbols, at or and the principles common to the word Syro-Arabian family, or by changes within the compass of radical letters after the manner of the so-called broken plurals of the Arabic grammar. The construct states that the relation of the noun, which is equivalent to the objective case, are denoted in changes in a final vowel, or by employing the relative pronouns The dative is indicated by prepositions. The comparative and superlative are expressed by the means of particles. There is no form for the dual members, either in the verb or the noun, which regard to the vocabulary and the language. 1/3 of the roots are to be found in the same state in Arabic. By making allowances for commutations and transpositions, many other roots may be identified with their Arabic correspondence. Some of its roots, however, do not exist in the present Arabic but are found in Aramaic and Hebrew. Besides this, it is native roots particular to itself and has adopted general Greek words but show no traces of the influence of Coptic. Edomite was again a northwestern Semitic Canaanite language, very similar to Hebrew. Akronite, Ammonite, Phoenician, Amorite, and Sutian, spoken by the Edomites in southwestern Jordan, in the parts of Israel in the second and first millennium BCE. It is extinct and known only from a very small corpus. It is attested in a scant number of impression seals, ostraca, and a single late date of early 7th to 6th century BCE letter discovered in Harvat Uza. So we can see that these are all Afro-Asiatic people, all the way from the Levant, all the way down to the Arabians, all the way down to Yemen, Sabians. We know the story of the Ethiopians and the relations of the Sabians through King Solomon. We know that the language that they speak is an old Southern Arabic language, which show that those people have genetic links and ties. They are the same people. Okay, one are Israelites, the others are Edomites, and some are Israelite and Edomites because Edom had converted to Hebrew up under John Hyrcanus. So we go to Obadiah 1 and 3. The pride of thine heart has deceived thee, thou that dwellest in the clefts of the rocks, whose habitation is high, that saith in his heart, who shall bring me down to the ground? Now we're talking about how these people dwelt in the clefts of the rocks, and this was Edom. So when nobody think I'm playing, we know clearly that Obadiah was talking about chapter 1, okay? In chapter 1, Obadiah was talking about Edom, okay? We see that right there, the vision of Obadiah, thus saith the Lord concerning Edom. They was talking about Edom here. So Edom was the one he was talking about in verse 3. Okay, the vision of Obadiah, thus saith the Lord concerning Edom. We have heard the rumors from the Lord, and the ambassador is sent amongst the heathen. Arise ye, and let us rise up against her in battle. Behold, I have made thee small amongst the heathen. Thou art greatly deceived. The pride of thine heart have deceived thee. Thou dwellest in the clefts of the rocks, whom habitation is high, that saith in his heart, who shall bring me down to the ground? Now we'll see what these rocks, the Edom, in the land of Edom, because these were these were Edomites, and we'll show you how the Edomites lived in the clefts in the rocks in Edom. Okay, we already showed you with other videos, what the Edomites looked like. Okay, now we're going to show you their land and the clefts and the rocks that Edomites lived in. These are the cliffs and the rocks, the highlands of southern Jordan. Okay, you can see for yourself, this is in southern Jordan. This is in the Middle East. This is not in Europe. This is not the Caucasus Mountains. White people had nothing to do with this area and this region. So when they say what other people lived in cliffs and rocks, I'll say the sons of Japheth, the Europeans that lived in the Caucasus Mountains, okay, as well as the blacks in the hot lands lived in mountains as well as the whites in cold lands. Okay, so this stuff is ridiculous that they're saying. The sons of Japheth did live in the mountains of Europe, and the sons of Esau, which were Afro-Asiatic, lived in the mountains, in the deserts, okay, of Saudi Arabia. It is the mountainous region that many scholars say is responsible for the sons of Japheth turning white, living in the cold regions and in mountainous regions. Okay, so there would be no reason for them to turn white in the mountains in the southern Arabian desert. These are some of the mountainous regions and sites and archaeology of the southern rocks and cliffs of the southern Arabian desert. We can see here carved into the cliff face is a depiction of a Mesopotamian royal figure standing before several astral symbols. The scene likely depicts the Babylonian king Nabonidus, who campaigned through Edom in the mid-6th century BCE. Let's get a closer look at that. We're talking about people who dwelled in the cliffs and the rocks. So you got the Mesopotamians and the Babylonians, that was mentioned dealing with cliffs and artwork of the Edomite people in the Saudi Arabian desert. Okay. These are the rock carved buildings in Petra, in Sodom, in Idumea. These are what they meant when they were not talking about living in the Caucasus Mountains, in the cold Siberian, cold ice ages, or none of that. These were the rocks and clefts that these people lived in. Okay? And I'm going to make a contrast to the difference in the rocks and clefts that the European sons of Japheth whites lived in. How these people are conflating history. Okay? Look at all of these beautiful houses that was carved straight out of solid rock bed, carved right out of the mountain itself, out of the rocks and the cliffs. Okay? These people, the people of the Arabic languages, of the Himyaritic languages, the Sabian language, and the Amharic Tigrian languages of Ethiopia, they all was good at carving temples, houses, and homes, and things like that out of solid rock bed. People, I mean, look at all of these different, look at all of this. It's much more. All of this comes from Petra in the Jordan. These are what they're talking about when these people lived high up in the rocks. Okay? That is not to be confused with this. Okay? We're looking at caves and caverns of the Caucasus Mountains. Okay? We're not talking about this. And this is what these people from the One West groups are talking about. If I get the camera to act right. They're trying to confuse, the One West camps are trying to confuse the cliffs and mountains of the Transjordan for the Caucasus Mountains. This is the Jordan tours through Jordania, the Caucasus Mountains. Okay, they want you to mistake all of that for this. Okay, up in Northern Europe. These are not the same places, people. They're teaching false information. These are the caves and caverns of the Caucasus Mountains. Not nowhere near as sophisticated as the caves in Petra. No science, no technology, just rocks and holes in the earth. You know. Now these are the caves that white people, Europeans, Caucasian people lived in the Caucasus Mountains. Okay. Even have their castles there. Look at them. Look at those places. Those places are nothing like the sophistication. Even the animals are dumb. Look at that. Just standing right there in the middle of the street. These images, as you can see, the Caucasus Mountains, these are high resolution. These were caves. You can see the gates and things like that and the rails that were added in modern times. Imagine a life without that. These were the caves and caverns the Europeans lived in Europe. Nothing like that which was going on in Petra. Look at this. Take a look at that. Much different, people. Much different. Much different. Look at this. No sophistication, no technology, no science it took to do this. Look at this. These are the caves of the Caucasus people. Okay? These are the caves the Europeans lived in and during the Caucasus, during the ice ages in the Caucasus Mountains. The sons of Japheth, who end up turning into white people in the ice ages. When the snow came, it blocked all of that stuff. Glaciers had them people sealed up in the mountains. You know what I'm saying? See, these are wintertime photos of the Caucasus Mountains. But I was telling you, now you don't even see those, the holes that people lived in. You can't even see them. Look at that. Covered up by snow and ice. Snowy winter mountains in the Caucasus Mountains. Look at this, people. These were the same mountains you just saw earlier. Imagine during the ice ages, all right? These people go, you see, they talking about Georgia Peach skiing. Look at this, people. That's nothing like what went on in Petra. These are not the cliffs and the mountains that was talked about in the book of Obadiah. Now, these are the Edomite Israelite people of Seba, of Yemen, and Ethiopia. And this is the St. George's Church cut out a solid rock bed in Ethiopia. So when you ask who are the other people, who are the people that live high up in the rocks and sophisticated and live in sedity and high up in the cliffs and the rocks? Well, we can see right here that there are several people other than the Europeans that lived in the cliffs and the rocks and lived high sophisticated, high-mindedness ways. Look at this. This is technology. This is science right here. These were the people that the Bible was talking about. Okay? When you want to talk about the Europeans living in Caucasus Mountains, who are the other people? Well, we got people that were black that lived in more sophisticated and better rocks and better mountains. Okay? The stuff y'all saying is ridiculous. You just can't sit up there and say white people are the only people that lived in cliffs and rocks. And when you say that, you're trying to undermine the people, and you really want to say caves and caverns. That's a black man down there, Ethiopia, cliffs and rocks. Look at this. All this in Ethiopia, carved right up out of the mountain. Look at that. Solid rock bed. The Church of Lalibela. Straight Ethiopia, peoples. Ethiopia, Yemen, those Afro-Asiatic people in hot lands, black folks, created sophisticated technology out of cliffs and rocks. And this is what the Bible was talking about when it said that. It was in Obadiah 3. It had nothing to do with that stuff that these people talking about with Europeans, white folks, and cliffs and mountains. Okay? So I punch up the American Indian rock pebbles, okay? And, these people ask, well, they ask dumb rhetorical questions. Like, who are the only people that lived in cliffs and rocks? As if though the Europeans were the only people that lived, they didn't even live in cliffs and rocks at all. They didn't even do it. In fact, every person on the planet, I can show y'all lived in sophisticated cliffs and rocks. And the Europeans didn't. They lived in mountains and caves and caverns. White people lived in mountain caves and caverns, not sophisticated and high-minded cliffs and rocks. Okay? You got the cliff dwelling of the Native American Indian, high resolution. Let's visit that page, take a look at that. Now look at that there, the Indian Pueblos. These are sophisticated now. These are not, look at that, you could tell that. It took a technology. Look at that circular right there did. That took technology, man-made ingenuity, okay? And these were the Amerindians. They lived in the palace. Is it called that a cliff palace? Okay? Now, if I make that picture big, you'll see that it took technology to do that. I'm trying to make it big. My phone is kind of slow. See, look at that. High technology and science carved out a solid rock bed. This is what they was talking about in Obadiah 3. People who was doing stuff like this in all hot, black, African, and Asiatic lands. Just tons of them, people. Carved right out of the mountain. Mount Rushmore wasn't the first mountain carving. All right. This stuff make Mount Rushmore look weak. And these are Indian people, okay? These are not, you see, talking about cliff dwelling of the natives. You can read the top of the caption up there, almay.com. Cliff dwelling of the Native American Indians, stock photos and images. So we go back again to Obadiah 1, okay? Obadiah 1, the vision of Obadiah. So saith the Lord concerning Obadiah. We have heard tidings from the Lord, and a messenger has sent amongst the nations. Arise, and let us go up, let us rise up against them in war. The vision of Obadiah. Why is Obadiah different? That he was chosen to prophesy concerning Edom and did not prophesy any other prophecy. Our sages of blessed memory stated Obadiah was an Edomite proselyte, saith the Holy One. Blessed be he from them, and in them will I bring upon them. Let Obadiah, who dwelt between two wicked people, Ahab and Jezebel, and did not learn from their deeds, come and impose retribution among Esau, who dwelt between the two righteous people, Isaac and Rebekah, and did not leave their deeds. Behold, I have made you small amongst the nations. You are very despised. Behold, I have made you small, meaning in contrast with what his father have called him, his big son, and his mother called him her big son, and the Holy One, blessed be he, says, in my eyes he is small. This is other Jewish literature that I don't have access to, so we'll go past that. Okay, the wickedness of your heart entices you. We're talking about Esau, who we showed what they look like and what they lay in the cliffs and the rocks that they were talking about, who dwelt in the cliffs and the rocks, whose habitation is high, who say to himself, who will bring me down to earth? Who dwell in the cliffs and the rocks, who relies on the support of his ancestors, Abraham and Isaac, but they shall not avail him. In the clefts, they talk about the clefts in Isaiah 19:7, and the land of Judah shall be to Egypt for a dread, a cleft of a rock, and do not wonder above the valve. Genesis 26:21-16. Like a shot in which there is no radical in the word, but the teth and the tet at the het. So we looked at the Hebrew scripture and the commentary, which didn't do us much good here in this one. I should have read it before I posted it, but it bees like that sometime. But anyway, the text still makes clear that talking about the rocks and the clefts of Edom in Petra. So that we see this, it's clear that Edomites were not the only people who lived high up in the clefts of the rocks. Okay, and the clefts of the rocks should not be interloped with caves and caverns of the Caucasus and European mountains. 13 complex castles, temples, buildings carved into the mountains. This is some of the artwork that I was showing you earlier. The actual high clefts and rocks that the scripture was talking about, the actual. And then you have others, okay? This is the Pajama Castle in Slovenia, okay? Here's a cave castle in India, in Ellora, India, okay? In Africa, this is called Hotel Marhala, okay? Try the cave dwelling experience, life experience for yourself. This is in Africa. So this is ridiculous when you say who are the only people that lived in the cliffs and the rocks. Okay, this is in Africa where black people live at, located near the Sahara Desert. Tunisia's Hotel Mahara allows guests to sleep in what was once an underground town dating back to the 4th century. located near the Sahara Desert. The caves allows residents to keep cool in intense summer heat. This is a hotel. Who are the only people who lives in the cliffs and the rocks? These are dumb rhetorical questions. These are the Kropfenstein Castle in Switzerland, still lacking the technology of the Afro-Asiatics. This is in Turkey, where Edomites dwelt at as well, still Afro-Asiatic in the Levant. Austria, a cliff palace in the United States of America, the Baum Castle in Switzerland. The Europeans are not as quite as swift as high up in the rock as the black Afro-Asiatics were, sir. The Ajanta caves in India, the Rappenstein Castle in Switzerland, the Lalibela Church of Ethiopia. We saw that earlier. The hand-carved caves and statues in China. Look at that. Awesome. Well, that's it, people. We're going to end it on this note right here. So when they ask you the dumb rhetorical questions about who are the only people that dwells in cliffs and rocks and mountains and all of this stupid rhetorical talk. Every people from all around the world lived at some point in the cliffs and the rocks and the mountains. So you can't say that for white people, brother. You can only say who lived in the Caucasus Mountains. And then you can't say that because Obadiah 3 was talking about they were talking about this and where it go? That one and this one coming up, I believe. This one. This is what Obadiah 1 and 3 talks about. If they try to get you to look at anything else, the people who lived in that area looked like this. As you can see them, they looked like this. And you can see them black people, black Yemenites. As you can see them black Yemenites, okay, living in the cliffs and the rocks and the mountains, okay? You can see it. Black Edomites, the niggers, living in the cliffs and the mountains of Yemen and Petra, okay? I'm not lying to you people. These people in these One West groups with that Esau the white man, their whole doctrine is flawed. And anybody believe it is foolish and they chose to be fooled.